Hello.
Good afternoon. Good morning. It's still morning, actually.
Yes, Justin, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. Very happy, very excited.
Yeah. So we are left with 2 minutes.
Okay, that's great.
Kakalis will be joining us and we will open up the webinar.
Okay, lovely. Thanks.
Okay. Robert, good morning. Happy to see you. Robert?
Francis, Justin, good morning.
Morning.
Morning to you.
Yes, I finally signed in.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you hear me. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to our 12th monthly webinar. This is the 12th in a series of monthly webinars organized by the Water Resources Institute of the Ministry of Water and Environment. My name is Dr. Kalisti Ndimugaya. I work for the Ministry of Water and Environment, and on behalf of the Water Resources Institute, I want to welcome all of you for sparing time to come and attend this webinar. These monthly webinars are held from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the last Friday of every month. We started these webinars in December 2022, and they continue to be held. So we want to use these webinars to share and learn on the work that is being done by different professionals, different experts, different fields. And we do welcome people to come and share the work they are doing in the various areas. And for today, we are excited to listen to a topic that I'm sure will be of interest to many of us. And the topic is learning about efforts and achievements to prevent the rapid corrosion of hand pumps in Uganda and stopping the rot initiative. And we are happy to have experts in this area. I would like to welcome Dr. Kirsten Dunnett. Is known to many of us, but in a special way, I want to introduce her. Somebody who has been running the rural water supply network for many years. So those of you who have been part of the water supply network, you know Kirsten. Kirsten now is the director for Ask for Water. But before she actually did all of that, she came to Uganda as a young lady doing research, and she's a Ugandan in all rights. And I know when Kirsten is here in Uganda, she feels very much at home. She did her research in Uganda. Her PhD was in Uganda, looking at groundwater and shallow groundwater, and also looking at the technology to develop groundwater. She continued to work in Uganda. She worked for the Ministry of Water and Environment as a consultant. She supported us a lot to actually prepare sector performance reports and sector reviews, and of course, supporting many organizations in various respects. So I'm happy to welcome Kirsten again. I know she's in Uganda, although we're having this event online. She's very much in Uganda, and we would want to hear from her at close range. Kirsten has been working in Uganda with a number of people within the Ministry of Water and Environment. And for this session, Kirsten has been working with Mr. Robert Mutigwa, who is the Principal Water Officer in the Ministry of Water and Environment under Water Supply and Sanitation Department, and a few other people who actually have been working with them, as they will introduce them later. Robert, of course, is a groundwater specialist, has done a lot of work in groundwater development in the country. He now coordinates work on groundwater development in various parts of the country. And of course, this area of discussion today is dear to him. He has also been spearheading many initiatives to ensure that our services are developed in a professional manner. He is part of a team right now that is spearheading the National Groundwater Management and Development Study, where we are trying to develop a national groundwater development and management strategy and policy. And Robert, of course, has done a lot of work as a consultant before joining the ministry, and he continues to move the water and the environment agenda, specifically on rural water. I would like now to invite Dr. Kirsten Dunnett and Mr. Robert Mutigwa to take the floor, take us through the session, and for the Water Resources Institute, we shall come back towards the end to wrap up this session. Over to you, Kirsten and Robert.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kalist, for your lovely, warm introduction. And I'm really looking forward to this webinar today. And thanks for the opportunity to present. Robert and I were really looking forward to it. Maybe, Francis, if you could put up the presentation, then I'll start to present.
Justin, are you in position to see the presentation?
I am, but it's not the, I think
Okay,
it's from a different presentation. It's the different, it's not the right presentation, it's another one.
Okay.
But we can see your screen, so that's good. Maybe while we're waiting for Francis to get the presentation up, it might be nice to also know where people are coming from. So feel free to write in the chat box, yeah, your organization and where you're from. Great, and that's perfect. Thanks a lot, Francis. So today, Robert and I are going to present about learning about the efforts and achievements to prevent rapid corrosion of hand pumps in Uganda. And I'll start with the international context. So essentially, about 500 million people, about half of the population of sub-Saharan Africa plus Sudan, rely on groundwater point sources as their main source of drinking water. So that's springs, boreholes, shallow wells. They serve half of the population of the subcontinent. And actually also about 1 in 5 of the population of sub-Saharan Africa, about 200 million people, rely on a hand pump as their main source of drinking water. And that's basically based on data that's collected by the Joint Monitoring Programme of WHO and the World Health Organization. Next slide, please. Oops, if you go back one slide, thank you. The slide's quite small here. Yeah, the next one. It's tricky because there's a delay. The one with the first maps. Yeah, perfect. This slide here kind of shows country by country the total population relying on groundwater point sources, and then looking in more detail what proportion of population rely on a borehole or a protected spring, and then are relying on hand pumps. And Uganda is one of the countries, as you can see, the map is quite small, but it's relatively high proportion of the population relying on hand pumps, along with some other countries, which is also very high, including South Sudan, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, a number of countries in West Africa. So while there's also a transition in many countries towards pipe supplies, this is not going to happen overnight and probably will take some decades. And there may even be populations that are going to be reliant on hand pumps for a very long time. Next slide, please. So rapid hand pump corrosion, just let me define it before we go into details. And basically what it is, it's when components of an inappropriate material are installed in aggressive groundwater, they'll corrode rapidly. And this rapid corrosion causes a really fast decline, technical decline, and it impacts negatively on the infrastructure lifespan and the performance of the hand pumps. And in fact, components that should last for 8 to 10 years may need to be replaced within a few months or a couple of years, riser pipes and pump rods in particularly. And GI, galvanized iron hand pump riser pipes and rods, and you can see they're clearly marked on the picture on the left. When you install them in water with a low pH, it combines to really cause this rapid corrosion and this red water and rusting that takes place. And poorly manufactured materials can also corrode rapidly. So even stainless steel can corrode quickly. If it's low quality and if it's installed in aggressive water, or even if it's installed in non-aggressive water, if the quality is not right, it will corrode. And in a recent study, we found that this happens in at least 20 African countries. You see them on the map there. And it's not just pH that causes corrosion, but also high salinity, chloride, and sulfate levels cause it. Next slide, please. So in fact, this rapid hand pump corrosion problem has been known about for over 30 years. And yet simple mistakes are happening again and again. They keep being repeated in several countries. Galvanized iron pumps and riser pipes continue to be installed in water that's aggressive. Pump materials are not always meeting quality standards and they're not always checked. And pump manufacturers and installers are not always incentivized to deliver good quality of hand pump components. So it's a problem for many years, but it also has solutions. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Robert. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Kerstin, and all the colleagues in attendance. It's nice sharing this experience, looking at the Ugandan context and the actions that we have taken as a country. Of course, the actions are not giving us a one-stop solution, but it's supposed to be a combination of several actions that can help solve the problem. Next slide, please. Yeah, so if we look at the information that Kerstin has been sharing was more like on a continental scale. But in Uganda, as the ministry responsible for water and environment, we have taken some actions of trying to solve the problem. And the challenges that comes with this action is that it is more of a blanket action. And it is indicated here that it is an affirmative action where we decided to stop the use of galvanized iron materials in hand-pumped groundwater sources. The cause for this was that we couldn't, as a country, probably manage assessing the level or the quality of galvanizing of any of the materials that were coming into the country for this purpose. And from a different perspective, these materials come into the country for more purposes than being used as groundwater sources. So therefore, we found ourselves that as a sector, we directed that only stainless steel materials could be used within the groundwater sources. And this is particularly for shallow wells and deep wells. So we hope that this could address the rapid hand pump corrosion challenge nationwide. So galvanized materials were suspended. And in the next slide, we shall be seeing the story of how this happened. Next slide. So on a contextual point, Kerstin was giving us global statistics, but on the national statistics, I want to say that we have populations that are served. When we talk of served, means they have access to water which is safe, irrespective of the technology. And in the national perspective, we have about 67%. And then if we look at the infrastructure which has been placed in the country, constructed to address the supply of water to the people living within the rural areas, we have about 84% of this infrastructure is functional. And in Uganda, we have about 67 or 68,000 villages. And of these, we are talking of 80% having access to a water source, which is safe. Safe water sources in the rural areas in Uganda, we use springs that are protected. We have shallow wells, deep wells, and then we also have gravity flow schemes. And if a community or a village has got a couple of taps, then we feel that it is sufficient enough. Of course, there comes in the aspect of the distance one has to move from one point to, let's say, their point of residence to where they can fetch the water. And we're looking at about 0.5 to 1 kilometer within such a distance. Statistically, we look at that as a community which is served. But now, the problem that we're dealing with, corrosion, is particularly common in the hand pumps, like we earlier said. That in the country, we have about 63,000 hand pumps if we look at our stock. So this means that we have 63,000 candidate which could undergo corrosion. Now, when we look at the estimates, if we have 44% of the population and 23 of them are using deep bores and shallow wells, that means that we are very, very vulnerable to the problem of corrosion. So that's the reason why we came up with a blanket decision to say, let's try to put this to a halt. And so far, the national survey data is showing that 43 of the population, if it's relying on hand pumps, and these are in a rural area. So somehow, our Ugandan population is basically rural. So the challenge lives across the country. We cannot say it is maybe localized to one part of the country. And I don't know how other countries are doing it. Maybe it will be subject of maybe negotiation, but we find that groundwater is the predominant technology that we have been able to use to make sure that people living in the rural areas can receive safe water supply. Next. And so I think Kirsten earlier on was talking about brown water, and we took this photograph to really bring to light what the situation is like. You can imagine one morning you wake up to go and get water, and then you're pumping, and all that is coming out is water as this brown. So there is a lot of investment into the infrastructure. You know, constructing a borehole and completion in Uganda is costing close to about $10,000. And then if at the end of the day, this amount of resource has been spent, and then we end up with a service of this nature. So it's not very, nobody's comfortable with this. So why are we looking at the suspension of galvanized pipes? The concern that were raised, of course, first of all, is corrosion, but then also the challenge, like I earlier mentioned, assuring that the quality of the galvanizing is good for both the pipes and the rods. It is something that the country didn't have internal capacity to provide. So therefore, we found it easier to make a blanket decisions. Of course, there were concerns that came up from our development partners, because within the country, we have several other development partners who help us in helping in developing water supply sources. Some of these are community-based, some of these are international or local NGOs, and they had issues raised. There were also issues coming from the providers who had probably procured a lot of these parts and put these in storage. And then, of course, the directive comes and takes them by storm. And there were issues that we had to deal with internally. But we had strong reasons as to why we made this decision, because it was evidence-backed. We had several research that had been taken within the country, locally from maybe our institutions of academia. And also we had the external persons that came in to do the research. So it was quite revealing. The evidence was there, and then an action had to be taken. Next, please. So in 2016, our Director of Water Resources Development issued a letter that was circulated to all persons that are involved in the development of water within the country. And we do this through local, we call it decentralized form of governance, where we have respective local governments implementing the development of shallow wells and deep wells. So this information was provided to them. And we also have a body that encompasses all NGOs that are dealing in water supply and sanitation. We call it UWASNet. So we also sent this communication to UWASNet. And then the suppliers also got to know about this. Of course, through dialogue, we held several meetings, but there was one particular one which was held in the north of the country where we came together, and then we provided additional information. I looked at, I think the challenge that came in earlier on was that we didn't do a lot of stakeholder engagement, and then maybe we didn't take the steps of informing the providers or the consumers or the users of the decision. So we had a little bit of resistance, but I think that after having several engagements, after the decision had been made, everyone came to accept that it was actually the right move to take. So the initial challenges came in, of course, getting to know the quality of the stainless steel. Was it 304 or 20? Is it 202? And these challenges came in, and we're still having them as of now. But I can say since 2016 to date, everybody within the country is at least aware of this directive. And the compliance levels could be anything between 70 to 80% of the developers, which I think is a good thing. We hope that maybe with more popularization and making the situation better in terms of quality assurance and grading, and people will will move on to accept this decision and happily work with it. Next slide, please. So I think that I want to Kirsten to take off from there and give us now that brief as the status as of today in 2023. Thank you, Kirsten. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Robert. And if we go to the next slide, please. Just to explain, the current study that we're taking is a collaboration between Ask for Water and the Ministry of Water and Environment. It's a very short study, undertaking last month and this month. We've had interviews and group discussions with over 50 stakeholders from all different stakeholder groups, also some observation of hand pump components and visits to a number of districts. The district visits were not representative, but rather indicative of the situation. And we're also having some ongoing engagement with a number of stakeholders who have some quantitative data, which we hope to bring into the study. And that includes the ministry MIS unit. Next, thanks. So what are the key findings of the status today? Well, as Robert has said, the change of materials as a result of the suspension is largely appreciated by implementers as contributing to the prevention of rapid corrosion. So it's made a difference. So really well done for taking this affirmative action. However, some stakeholders still install GI pipes and or GI rods. There are still quality assurance challenges, including, as Robert has mentioned, recognizing the stainless steel grades or inferior products. There are also cost implications. Stainless steel is more expensive. Even the alternative, another alternative, which is PVC with stainless steel collars, is also more expensive. And that's a particular challenge for communities using shallow wells who really are obliged to replace those corroding components themselves. And also a really important point is that stainless steel needs to be properly handled during installation. And if it's handled badly, it can also break or be damaged quite easily. Just go back, Francis, to the previous slide. Thanks. The picture here on the right is just an example of components that have been taken out of a well that's being replaced, a borehole actually. And what's interesting to note is the mix of components. So it's, it's not only GI, this is a mix of GI, of stainless steel, and this is also possibly a knowledge issue or a cost issue that's when replacements are made, it's not necessarily that everything is replaced with stainless steel. Next slide, please. Thanks, Francis. And here's just some pictures, example of quality challenges, and showing that handling is also very important. So these are cases that we looked at in Mubende district, where the stainless steel had cracked just under the weld, had cracked laterally, was very thin, rods that had snapped, so issues. And in our report, we'll also talk about quality issues as well as handling issues, which both contribute to quality. Next slide, please. Before handing back to Robert, I just want to point out a very interesting initiative that's taking place in Uganda. It's called the Handpump Improvement Project, and it's a collaboration between WaterAid UK, WaterAid Uganda, the Ministry, and Masindi and Kamwengi district local governments. And this project is really trying to develop and test new riser pipe solutions that shouldn't be any more expensive than the current GI, alongside other very interesting design modifications. Phase one, they installed 6 test installations and then went back for design improvements, and they're now installing 100 to really test. And the picture here, you can just see this is the installation of the polder modification. in each of the individual streams. So back to you, Robert.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so after talking about this nice story and the study that has been going on for about 2+ months within the country, looking at what we have done before, what we're doing, and what the sector is demanding in the in the time to come, we're coming up with about 5 key areas that we feel probably as practitioners and professionals in this field is something that we need to think through. Now, sometimes when we come up with this, it's not that we have everything and all the information. And I'm happy that this webinar brings professionals that are working in various countries and various parts of the world and probably face the similar challenges. And it provides a platform for sharing experiences and coming together for a better solution. Of course, I also did see earlier on what Cassin was talking about, the test where we're now installing 100 wells and we're going to be monitoring these closely. I remember seeing earlier on in the chat where was it Paul who is talking about designing heavy-duty PVC riser pipes, which are U2 or U3, I believe is the same initiative. And this is going to be something that we could also be much interested in as a sector. But it's important to raise awareness and improve the knowledge. Because without knowledge, when you don't know the experiences, if we can document the experiences we have gone through to some other partners in other parts of the world, probably it will save them a lot of resources not to go through the same mistakes we've gone through. And I think that when we think of popularizing GI suspension, it's important to provide guidance on the limitations and alternatives. Of course, you bring in new equipment and material, but you have to train the people that are using them. And in most cases, we have a network of the people we call hand pump mechanics. Probably the other issue, something that Kirsten didn't even mention is, the alternative, the galvanized iron sometimes are the PVC pipes with the stainless steel sockets. But also, if you don't have the adequate tools to handle that, then this will also become a problem. There is a tendency of getting the pipes and the sockets loose, and then they become points of leakages. Yeah, I'm happy that innovation is taking place. And we are, as a sector, will be so much interested in the results and the functionality, the close monitoring, so that we can also share this information on a similar platform, and colleagues from other parts of the country can solve a lot of their problems without facing the challenges we're facing. We did a little bit of the U3 modified hand pumps. The nomenclature we're using here is U3, but it's the India Mark III. So when we say U2, it's just customized for the country as Uganda. U2 or U3 is not any different from India Mark II and India Mark III. Now, very, very important is the aspect of improving quality assurance. We have a body which is responsible for monitoring, assessing quality assurance within the country. It's called the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. But this body is only mandated, can only be as strong as the sectors that it supports. For example, the water and environment sector is supposed to have an independent team of persons that occasionally meet and look at the challenges the nation is having in terms of quality of materials for construction of water supply systems. Unfortunately, as you can see, some of these committees last met maybe over 20+ years ago. So there is even that lag within the respective government agencies that should be addressing the challenges. Now, if there is a shortfall at that level, you can imagine the consumer level, the challenge that will be at the consumer level. So the quality aspect of the materials that can be used should be spanning across very, very many other stakeholders, not just government, but even up to the last user. Now, in terms of equity, it is important to find ways of supporting the poor communities. I think Kirsten did mention earlier that these materials that are being proposed are quite costly. I believe if you look at the currently in the country, the cost of one stainless steel pipe and one stainless steel rod is close to $100. Now, if we're going to have 10 or 15 pipes installed in a hand pump, so you're talking of a lot of resources that are required. Now, if you go back to the previous statistics of having 63,000 water points, if we choose to say we are going to have all these overhauled, that is how much it would cost the country. And maybe I don't think we have those resources. I believe the challenge we have in Uganda is also in other countries. But I think that one of the greatest mistakes, and I want to admit as maybe one from the side of the policy, was the issuing of the blanket, making the blanket decision to say we have stopped the use of galvanized iron, because this should be backed by scientific facts. That's why we're saying that the chemistry and the corrosion studies has to be undertaken. For you to come up with that directive, you need to have it based on scientific facts, which information probably is not available, wasn't available at that time. But I believe we've been living long enough with this that it's time for us to start looking into those particular aspects. And my next slide is going to actually illustrate this point further. Next, please. Yeah, we understand that corrosion is actually driven by several factors, the key of these being the pH, and of course the cations and anions in there. And when you go on to do the chemistry and look at the corrosion indices, they will give you a lot of information on how you can play with the water chemistry and then be able to assess whether the water is very aggressive or is mildly aggressive or it's not aggressive at all. Through my work within the country, I have come across areas where actually I would never expect corrosion to occur. And from literature, it is stated that if you find pipes from groundwater that are covered with some white powdery slurry material, it is actually a deposition of carbonates. So what is happening here is the opposite of corrosion. So the ions are coming from the water and being deposited on the walls of the pipe, thereby protecting the pipe. So you wouldn't expect corrosion to occur in such places. So I think that as a long-term recommendation, it is very, very important that a better quality regulation is undertaken. In as much as the decision that was made was to do a bit of firefighting and fix the problem, but it's now very important that as a nation, as a country, we come back forth and look at the decision that was made. And I think it's important that we precisely identify and localize the problem of corrosion, because not all parts of the country are having that problem. I put them up to show a bit of the catchments, the bigger catchments we have in the country. And in some of these catchments, you may have the smaller catchments where if better detailed studies are done of the chemistry and the ability to have aggressive water, I think we should be able to map out zones within the country where it is safe to use galvanized iron, so that we can save on the cost and be able to provide a better service and cover so many people. Of course, that does not negate the fact that it does not negate the need to have the quality of the materials checked and assessed, but with proper galvanized material, I still feel there are parts of the country where this galvanized iron can be done, can be used. But as long as we do not have a dedicated component of doing this thorough assessment, we find that it is safer to remain with the directive running. You would rather say that better safe than sorry, because we don't want to go back. We don't want to lose the gains that we have made as a country in popularizing the use of galvanized iron. Popularizing the use of stainless steel, although some pockets can really support and are okay with the use of galvanized iron. So if we can study and come up with area-specific or even source-specific, because aquifers may differ in quality, I think this would be a better approach. And for the nations that can afford this, and if there are some projects that can come up and still study and map areas that are not so aggressive in terms of groundwater chemistry, I think it will really add value to that directive, so that the ministry can come up and now precisely issue such a directive. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think we can now have some lessons learned from Kirsten with her international experience. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Robert, for your detailed recommendations for Uganda. I mean, just reminding everyone, Uganda is one of only 3 countries that we know of that took affirmative action to address the corrosion problem. And so there's a lot to be learned. So here's just some of the kind of key points of learning from Uganda for other countries. And so on the suspension of GI, galvanized iron, if rapid hand pump corrosion is a widespread problem in a country, the relevant line ministry or regulator should consider suspending its use, carefully measuring the pros and cons of a nationwide or localized suspension. And I think Robert's made that very clear in the last slide. On consultation and awareness raising, prior to any suspension or any action, it's important to undertake wide, transparent stakeholder consultation, taking on board the concerns of stakeholders and really developing a suitable timeline as well as guidance materials for the change, for any change. And in advance of the suspension, ensure that all funding agencies, government agencies, NGOs, suppliers, drillers, and hand pump mechanics, that they're all aware, and communities, that they're all aware of the suspension or the change and the implications for programs and budgets in particular, because this will come at a cost. Hopefully with the hand pump improvement project and maybe other initiatives, we'll be able to have alternatives that are also as cheap, as affordable as GI. However, if not, it's important that everybody understands the cost implications. Then, in terms of guidance, government should provide clear guidance, also in popular format. I can hear some background noise. In popular format with respect to alternative materials and components, and guidance on depth limitations and handling. And that brings me to the next point of training, is that pump mechanics and installers need to be absolutely properly trained on the correct handling and installation of alternatives such as stainless steel with PVC, or even looking forward, what may come out of hopefully will come out of the hand pump improvement project. And also quality assurance, ensure that national standards and guidelines are updated as early as possible to ensure that standards bureaus can work with the regulator, with the ministry, to ensure quality. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So can you go back? Or maybe we need to go forward a slide. Yeah. So first, thank you for listening out. So we can go forward. One more slide. I'm going to go forward in the map. So just to say, this is an overview of some of the Stop the Rot publications. We can share this on the Water Resources Institute website. Uganda is really a pioneering country here, so I'm extremely grateful for the lessons we've been able to learn. And if we go back to the previous slide, sorry, Francis, for the confusion. Just thanks a lot for listening to both of us, and Robert and I and Paul Busuborwa and Elisa Chayune, who are working on the report. We expect to publish it by January 2024 and look forward to hearing your responses. So that's it from us. Back to you, Caliste and Francis, and looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, both Christina and Robert, for the presentation. Now we are going to a session of questions and answers. I've seen some questions in the chat. Probably, Kirsten, we can look through and we respond. But let us give the opportunity to the members online to come in and ask questions. Feel free to raise your hand.
I see a question here from Janet Akot around health issues from, I think, I understand the corrosion of iron materials. And talking about dark colors, one of the things that's also been raised by stakeholders is black color of water, which is often manganese, which can also be a byproduct of rusting, of corrosion. There can also be manganese naturally available in groundwater. And certainly there's a really important role for the ministry together with the National Bureau of Standards in making sure that the quality of materials that are installed in the ground or installed in pipes are of the right quality. There's another initiative looking at lead in drinking water. There have also been concerns raised in other countries around lead and lead as a byproduct of materials. So the role of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards and the ministry is very important in making sure that these products are not available on the market. So I hope that responds to your question, Jane. And look forward to hearing questions or comments from anyone, either on Uganda or internationally.
Yeah, Kirsten, I think as the questions are coming in the chat, I would like to add something to the question that you've been responding to, particularly probably about 10 or so years back, we hadn't expanded our spectrum of the water quality analysis that we were undertaking for the groundwater sources. We had a list of parameters that included only simple cations and anions. And once a water sample passed these, then we would assume it is good and safe for potable use. But lately, with the within the national laboratory, we have expanded the spectrum of parameters, which are a requirement. And heavy metals, talk of zinc, lead, manganese, are some of the parameters that we test for, because we realized there could be several existing water points that are having a lot of heavy metals that have previously been passed for the test. So the question probably which came in, the dark scaling, as you did say, may not necessarily be a result of the poor cooking materials, the utensils, but it could also still be associated with the water. And I think lately, if you've been very active on social media, you might have seen the report which came up and was showing the contamination within the rice within the country. Of course, that could be another debate, health related, yes, but we don't want to run, we feel that water probably is also a contributor to this, if that was the problem. And we're not so sure of the source of the heavy metals. I know the study was done, but on a different platform, we're trying to reassess and look into the quality of the research, especially the source of the water that was used for cooking, maybe for growing the rice, and where the rice samples were picked from. I know that in the country, we're taking a lot of rice from Tanzania, so you never know. But when we look at this wholesomely, we should be able to advise the nation on what is the right thing to do. And as of now, I don't think we really have problems with the cooking utensils, but we shall definitely bring this to the attention of UNBS and look through it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. No, thanks for that clarification. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that broader testing. Maybe if I could pick the question from Wanda again, and probably Robert can pick the next question from Philip Nyenje. So you asked about PVC, Wanda again. So there are kind of three alternatives at the moment on the market here in Uganda. One of the alternatives is PVC with PVC connectors. However, that's very weak material, and essentially you can only install maybe 2, maybe at a push 3 pipes. So you're talking about 6 meter depth, 9 meter depth, because it's just too fragile. So that's the first one option, but really not suitable for anything below about 6 meters. The other option is uPVC, but with stainless steel connectors. We'll put photographs of those into our report. But again, they're not suitable for depths of, stakeholders say, some say 30 meters, some go as far as 39 meters. So 10 to 13 pipes is kind of the maximum for those. Stainless steel is the other alternative that we talked about. And then the innovation that's being undertaken at the moment is a heavy duty PVC, the one that's being tested by the Handpump Improvement Project. It's just testing at this stage. And it's basically heavy duty PVC together with galvanized iron connectors at the moment. So that's kind of what's on the market. Maybe next question from Philip to you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you. Philip, thanks for the question as well. Now, in terms of policy, as of now, we are still working with the directive issued by the Directorate of Water Development. And in this letter, probably, I don't know, we shall have to have it also popularized on this webinar. Whoever's attended, who can share the same. It provides several details of materials that are used in water supply. It goes beyond the stainless steel pipes or hand pumps, but we're also looking at the HDPE pipes, the pressure rating and all that. Lots of details are included in that. But for the purpose of this webinar, we're only talking about the stainless steel. Now, the requirement definitely is saying we use stainless steel 304 grade. The challenge is, where do we test within the country to confirm that this is stainless steel grade 304? I do believe that I think UNBS has a laboratory that probably has got the capacity to do this. And we are going to be informing the sector stakeholders, especially those who are importing these materials, to always come along with that certification from UNBS. I think the laboratory is recently installed. However, what we need to bear in mind is the importation of materials, especially pipes, is not just for only water supply. It could be used for other purposes. And that is why it is not possible. It would have been the easy option to say we don't import any material of maybe GI or less of this grade stainless steel, but it's not only used for water supply. It could be used for other purposes for which the quality of that material suffices. And maybe that's where the shortfall comes in. The pipe could be imported for construction, and then it ends up in the water supply. So it's a bit of just making sure that the supply chain which provides materials for installation within the water, the groundwater sources, is a bit clear and streamlined. I want to still reiterate the fact that it is not fair to say we shouldn't have galvanized iron installed in any of the water sources across the country. However, the selection of which water source should be installed with galvanized iron should be based on scientific evidence. Not all the water within the country, not all the groundwater within the country is aggressive. So this is something that I did find out so many years ago after looking at several water points. The only challenge, like I said earlier, is the ministry just needs to zone out which areas are safe for galvanized iron and which level of galvanizing, and then which areas require only stainless steel. I think this addresses the key questions that have been raised by Philip. Look, back to you, Kirsten.
Great, thanks a lot, Robert. Actually, a lot of the questions coming in now are Uganda focused. So Tara Bartnick from WaterAid is just pointing out that this handpump improvement project is currently underway in Masindi and Kabarole districts. I had put Kamwenge, so thanks for the correction there, Tara, that's my mistake. Suspension of GI, I think you've responded to the question from Daniel already. Plans, this is something that needs to be done.
Yes, I could still say something to Daniel's question. Daniel, in his opening remarks, Dr. Kalist mentioned of the ongoing groundwater study project. We are mapping groundwater within the country, and some of the parameters that are in this mapping project, we're looking at the chemistry of water in the ground. So probably this mapping will be able to help us to narrow down on some of the specific zones that we think we can have other materials used other than stainless steel. Because the whole essence is to have an affordable, to have a cost which is user-friendly, and if we can save some resources, then we can cover more people. So government is really doing a very big project, looking at the whole country, mapping the resources in terms of quantity and quality. And I believe when this is completed, we shall have much better information on which to update the directive that was issued. Thank you.
That's great, thanks. I think we'll be slowly moving to kind of to a closure with the webinar, but there's a few kind of hanging issues. Anthony asked about composite materials. I have to say that's beyond my knowledge. So that's something for innovation. So I can't respond to that. I'm not sure that Robert can respond to that either.
Come again, which question is that?
It's to do with coating. Hold on, the question's moved. The question's moved now. Coating iron pipes with plastic. So it's kind of we're looking at a composite materials. But I think that's something maybe is happening in industry, but certainly I don't have any knowledge about plastic coated steel pipes. Michael Ekodu asked about the U3 uPVC pipes. I think you mean the U3M. Do you want to say something on the U3M, Robert? The U3 modified.
Yes, I also want to make mention on the question that was sent in by a breeder also. She says, with the direction of the deeper and larger diameter wells and experience on the use of stainless steel, I think that when we, as a country, we are developing what we call large diameter wells, and these are mainly production boreholes where our target is to get water for pipe water supply systems and maybe large scale irrigation. So in these, we definitely do not use the stainless steel pipes because we are using motorized obstruction, so we prefer to use HDPE pipes. And where we have used the stainless steel, I think the question still remains the same. It has to be the quality that can determine whether we use the stainless steel pipes or not. I also did see a question from Joel, which is talking about the health effects of corroded, using water from corroded pipes. I think corrosion in principle only results in increment of certain parameters, especially iron, into the water that you abstract from the borehole. And now, of course, we shall go back and look at what is the impact of taking excessive iron. I think this is well documented. We just look at the quality guidelines, and on a national scope, we are using the East African quality water quality parameters tests. This is until 2018 or 2019, I'm not so certain. But within the East Africa, we are comfortable with 0.1 as the limit concentration for iron. So once you have a water that tests above 0.1 milligrams per liter, then it's not fit for consumption with respect to iron concentration. Thank you. Kirsten, are there some questions that you can handle?
I think we're kind of done. We've just had some comments from Vinnie Casey, just reminding us of work that was done by the Hidden Crisis Project, looking at corrosion, and also previous work under the RWASA program that identified corrosion issues. That could be helpful information for further studies looking at water chemistry and corrosion risks. So he's going to pull together those documents. Moses and Anthony, you have your hands up. Moses, do you have anything you want to ask quickly before we close?
Thank you very much, Kirsten and Francis. I'm Moses Silvanga. My worry is about the Minister of Health. Where is the Minister of Health in this equation? Because the Minister of Water, you are giving us things which are not, which has no what research. We are just on conspiratorial theories. So we need the Minister of Health to come out, because this is now a health issue. All over the country, they are galvanized what pipes and what iron sheets. So we need the Minister of Health to come up with a message. For us as civil society, our work is advocacy. And right now, I have even informed the people that these water galvanized pipes are not good for us. It's not safe for us. So what message can we take from the Minister of Health in Uganda? I beg you to submit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good one. Now, I believe that probably we as the custodians of the water resource should be better positioned to inform the Ministry of Health of which areas have got problems with the galvanized material that can result into health issues. So I want to request that, like I did mention, when we're done with the ongoing groundwater mapping project, some of the stakeholders in these projects are not just Ministry of Water, but we also have our other sister ministries. For example, when we're finished mapping groundwater, we have to share this information with the Atomic Energy Council. Some of our groundwater, we don't know whether it's got, they have to tell us about the safety in terms of radioactivity. So also Ministry of Health will definitely be engaged at an appropriate time. Now, if you realize that lately, the Prime Minister guided that reporting on the achievements of each sector cannot be done independently, but we have the sector-wide program approach where we have health, education, water, all coming together to synchronize their works. So in as much as it was such a difficult thing to do a little earlier on, but lately there is very close working collaboration in the various sectors. So I believe that the challenges that we face or the issues that we come across, we are going to share with them with our sister sectors, and then we collectively come up with a solution. So I really want to still make it clear that it is not that galvanized material, water within the galvanized material is not safe. It is only in a few cases. And I see the similar question by Andrew Sunday, where he's talked of storage at household, which is done in galvanized materials. I want to inform you that we're only discussing groundwater. Now, groundwater is water we have picked from the ground and not changed the chemistry and provided to the people to use. If you consider water picked from the ground and then some treatment is done to that water, most of these parameters, the concentration of these other parameters have to be lowered to within the limits of treated groundwater. There are also concentration limits for that. So if you are getting water, let's say from national water, you shouldn't have a problem of corrosion of your materials because it's treated to the levels that are required. That does not negate the fact that you have to buy good material. For example, I also sometimes find some of my pipes in the house, they are beginning to show some signs of corrosion, but that now is attributed to the quality of galvanizing of the materials that you use in your house for plumbing. Otherwise, as long as water is being treated like under national water, the parameters have been adjusted to levels that are safe for your household consumption. But when you come back to the groundwater where we don't do any treatment, I think that's where the challenge is very, very prevalent. But we want to still inform our colleagues that thanks for this information, and it's through such collaborative platforms that we manage to engage our sister sectors, and we come up with a one-piece solution, as opposed to Ministry of Water working independently from Ministry of Health, from Ministry of Energy, you know, all these are collectively. And whatever outputs we put forward, whatever products we bring to the public, it is coming to the same people. Health, we're looking at them as patients. Water, we look at them as water users. Agriculture is looking at them as peasants or farmers, but they are the same Ugandans. So our services, I agree with you, have to be synchronized so that we offer one solution. And we shall be looking into this as government. Thank you for that clarification and question raised.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Robert. And I'm going to hand back to the wonderful Water Resources Institute for closing the webinar. Francis, are you there?
Francis, Kirsten, I don't know whether there are still other questions because I think the schedule was to run from 11 to 1. So,
Kirsten, I think we still have 1 hour.
We still have an hour?
At 1.
I thought it was only
so
1 hour.
This 1 hour, normally we leave it for the questions and answers. So we can continue with, I'm seeing so many questions in the chat.
Hello, Francis.
Respond to them.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was just 1 hour. I didn't realize we had 2 hours. Okay.
No, 2 hours.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Hello, Francis.
Yes. Yes, Anthony.
Yes, Francis, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
Currently in Uganda, we are crying about the plastic kind of craze. And I sent in some suggestion there, but I think it was not well understood. I wanted to explain that we could have a composite material where the core is metal or steel, and the coating inside and outside is made out of plastic, instead of the galvanizing or the stainless steel that we are talking about. Couldn't that work out if we involve people who manufacture pipes?
Thank you very
Anthony.
much, Anthony.
Robert.
I think this is a good suggestion. It is commonly said that necessity is the mother of invention. So probably the manufacturers on the other side, we need to give to them some ideas. Definitely, if we have got PVC pipes that have got stainless steel couplings, I do believe that then it is also possible that we can have steel pipes that are coated with the PVC to offer that protection. But you see, we need to, whatever proposal we come up, especially if it's going to go to a manufacturer, it also has to make economic sense. Now, what am I trying to say? Worldwide, I do believe the hand pump technology is being phased out. And in Uganda, that's is what is happening. Of course, we're not saying that tomorrow the hand pump technology will be out. I do believe we still have a decade plus with the hand pump technology. However, if you have set up a factory to manufacture these kind of pipes, what is the worldwide uptake? Does it make economic sense? Now, for purposes of keeping certain things being done the right way, I know that some actions have to be done even when they don't make economic sense. But if it is what is necessary to save a certain population from being exposed to the dangers of this kind of contamination, I do believe then it might make economic sense to other persons other than the manufacturers. Nonetheless, I think this is a very good suggestion. And I'm happy that this webinar has got both national and international presence. Casting, maybe this could be one of those things that really hadn't crossed our minds, because we're trying to have a solution to a challenge, but we seem to be maybe addressing one part of the, one side of the challenge. But the challenge could also go to the other side and say, hey, manufacturers, in sub-Saharan Africa, probably we have so many hand pumps, and the uptake of this kind of technology or this kind of pipes would be so much. Are you interested in doing business? And these are maybe other things that we can take up with UNICEF or some UN agency, because at the end of the day, it becomes a global initiative, a global undertaking. So thanks for this suggestion. I want to think that definitely our report would definitely also reflect this. I don't know whether we might also make efforts to talk to one or two manufacturers, especially on a global scale, because then they have to be doing this at such a scale that their return on investment makes economic sense to them. But I do believe this is a very good suggestion. Thank you so much.
No, thanks a lot. I mean, it's something I have to say I know absolutely nothing about, so it's very difficult to comment, but certainly we can put it into a report that this was a suggestion proposed within the webinar. One of the challenges actually is, despite the huge dependency on hand pumps, and you saw in the one of the opening slides, it's about a fifth, 20% of people in sub-Saharan Africa rely on hand pumps. And in fact, even more than a fifth don't have access to an improved water supply at all. Hand pumps are going to be around for a long time. And I would say more than 10 years, I would say decades, plural. I mean, maybe Uganda might be less, but for many other countries, it's going to be a long time. And so if those people have hand pumps, they should have services that actually work and provide good quality of water and don't need to be maintained at high cost, because the infrastructure is poor quality. In terms of innovation by manufacturers, I mean, one of the innovations that came up is the stainless steel connectors on uPVC pipes. There's different theories as to where that came from, but certainly it's something that's being produced by the manufacturers. It's not in the international standards. It's not in the Indian standards, it's innovation. So there are also other innovations that could be taken up by the private sector, I think. So back to you, Robert, for some of the response to if there's any more Uganda questions.
I'm seeing one from John Kura when he says the possibility to change India Mark II galvanized iron with PVC. And maybe this had even come earlier and had escaped my attention. When we modify India Mark II from galvanized iron pipes, we came up with what would be the equivalent of India Mark III modified, which we are calling in Uganda U3 modified. We did replace the riser pipes with the PVC pipes. But of course, this has a very big challenge, the depth of installation, an issue, and also handling that long string of pipes, because the U3 modified, you have to join the entire string of pipes. If you are going to install 10 pipes, you join them at once before you start installing them. Of course, the pipes are flexible, but very, very vulnerable. And you might need an entire village to have this installation done, which could also be another issue. But I did see the earlier work by Poldo, where we are working at installing PVC up to 60-meter depth, and he says it's probably functioning very well. I think this might be one of the new uptake technology, which definitely is going to be helping the sector, not just only in Uganda, but within sub-Saharan Africa, where these problems are a challenge. I just want to encourage ourselves that let's keep collaborating and sharing such kind of information. I hope that when this, at some point in time, this research should also do a presentation or do a webinar with the Water Resource Institute and be able to bring to awareness the achievements so far and maybe the challenges. You never know, someone on the other side listening in could have a solution to the challenge. So let's together build the sector and we collectively solve the problem of galvanizing. Thank you so much, Vinny, for the comments you put together. I think it was very interesting to get to see that several studies had been done which provided the rationale for the directive of the change to stainless steel. And like I did say, the more scientific evidence we have, the better we are at making much more and well-guided decisions and directives. And especially for us who are on the side of policy formulation, it helps us to put in policies which are tried and tested, as opposed to something that we're thinking through without very good, sufficient scientific evidence. Back to you, Kirsten, if you feel there's something else you want to respond to.
No, thanks a lot. Just kind of picking up a comment from Sandy Pollock, who was talking, reflecting on this new this new hand pump improvement project design compared to the U3 modified, and pointing out that actually the pipes, the riser pipe, you can dismantle it. At the moment, it's with galvanized iron connectors. So it's not the same as the U3M, it's different. But it's actually picked up, from what I saw in the field, which was really fascinating. It's picked up some things from the U3M and picked up other things from all the thinking that the team's been doing behind that. So I would say any of you who are in Masindi or Kabarole and have the opportunity to see some of the installations, please do, contact WaterAid. And maybe Alfred can put his contact details here in the chat, but just encourage anyone to see what they're doing, because it's really, really interesting. I also see Wanda Magan has commented on the blue pump. I don't know, Sean Fury, are you still online? Because maybe you can give us a few words on the blue pump. I think you're better placed to do that with me. You've been following in much more detail. I'm hoping you're still around. Sean from SCAT in Switzerland. I see you're there.
Yeah, Kirsten, as Sean is coming in, I also seen some comments to do with the routine surveillance that we have within the country under the local governments. Now, the chemistry, the tests that are required to be able to look at the concentration of these particular ions, especially heavy metals, are not something that can easily be done. You need to have this mobile portable laboratory And yes, providing the lab, the portable lab may not be the challenge, but ingredients that are used to do the testing on site, and the rate at which you replace these ingredients and the cost thereof eventually tend to make it a little bit distasteful to have this laboratory. So you may find that it's not possible to have all our 100 plus districts equipped with this mobile laboratory. It eventually comes back to the cost of this. Although if a routine surveillance is done and then we can have an indication, then it's possible that the central laboratory of the ministry can focus on an area where such concentrations, elevated concentrations have been found through this routine surveillance. And then we can maybe do, I would call it a zoom in and come into the region which probably seems to be problematic. I know that the local government, the district water quality testing kits are limited to very simple parameters. But if we can study these and maybe give them a little more in reagents, they can test a few more parameters that can also act as pathfinders to inform and make and identify areas that probably need more attention in terms of testing the quality. And these were comments from Brian, I think.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Robert. And I'm informed that Sean is back to maybe comment on the blue pump. No. I mean, yeah, I would rather he talk about it because he's much more informed than I am. So I'll wait for him to come back. But are there any other comments that we haven't picked up? I mean, just one of the things on water quality, one of the big issues with corrosion is that because the hand pump is corroding, because often you have very red water in the morning, and that's the water quality issue, and people end up abandoning the source or hardly using the source. So yeah, we're talking a lot about the knock-on effects of corrosion rather than the effect of iron in water, because it has to be very high levels of iron in water for it to be a health issue. So yeah, the issue is when people move to another source.
Kirsten, I want to inform the colleagues that I know it's been you and I who have been talking, but we also did this work with two other colleagues of ours. We have Paul and Erisa, and I don't know if Paul or Erisa also have something to respond to or a contribution to make. Erisa, if you're listening in and you need to make a comment, please come in. Paul, please come in.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erisa Cheune. I work with the Ministry of Water and Environment, and like Cassin and Robert indicated, I happen to have been part of the team that has been doing this study. My colleagues have touched on almost everything, but I just have a quick one, which I feel I should highlight. There's a colleague a gentleman who was raising an issue of involvement of Ministry of Health in this whole agenda of quality of pipes and vis-a-vis the quality of water. And I just wanted to add that earlier this week, we met UNBS as part of the study, and we found out that there's actually a committee, it's called Technical Committee 107, which comprises of Ministry of Water. It has stakeholders basically who are looking at standards of these pipes. Okay, and just to give information that Ministry of Health is also part of it. And there's also private sector, the people who are involved in importing of these pumps, like Victoria Pumps, are also part of this committee. They are donors, UNICEF. So at that level, government has tried, in terms of standards and also looking at the quality of pipes, government has tried to involve people. Though, as indicated by Robert, this committee has been in limbo. It has not met for some time, for over, I think, 10 years. But I think we shall, as government, we shall make sure that it is revived, and issues of these pipes and the quality of pipes is brought to the attention of everyone, such that Ministry of Health can also get actively involved in ensuring that the water we supply out there is of good quality. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Erisa. That's great, and it was really encouraging meeting with the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, and hopefully a real revision, ultimately a revision of the standards to take into account what's being promoted and even some of these innovations coming up in the country. I don't know if Paul, you want to come in, you can let us know. Meanwhile, Sean, I think, really is back now. Sean, do you want to talk about the blue pump? There was a comment suggesting the blue pump could be something suitable for Uganda, and you really are the best person to just give a bit of an insight as to why it may be or why it may not be. So thanks, Sean.
Sure, sorry. Yeah, I had to step out for a moment. Yeah, so the blue pump was developed by a Dutchman called Paul van Beers, and sort of developed over a period of like 15-20 years. He passed away a few years ago, and as a result, the pump is no longer supported. There's a small Dutch NGO that is trying to continue his legacy and is trying to puzzle together, you know, where were these pumps installed in about 10-15 countries. And so it's not a well-supported pump because Mr. Van Beers was quite a character, and though he had some really great ideas and a lot of persistence, he wasn't so much of a team player, so he didn't really build up much of a organization or following to support his design. And also an independent evaluation that was done a few years ago of blue pump in Kenya, in the Turkana region, and in Gambia, kind of concluded that yes, the blue pump is slightly better, slightly more robust than the India Mark II, but actually what was much more significant factor was the management arrangements and the skills and the supply chains. That's what made much more of a difference than the design of the pump itself, in comparing those two pump types. So that's not to say that it isn't possible to make improvements in it, and it may be possible to learn a few things from the blue pump. And I think Sandy and the Poldor team have looked at that and considered what might be what ideas might be worth continuing. But I think overall it's a bit of a dead end as a hand pump design now. Yeah.
Thanks, great. Thanks for coming in there, Sean, unexpectedly to talk about the blue pump and the challenges. Robert, Erisa, and Paul, I think we've really responded to the questions, and I don't want to make this continue longer unnecessarily. So do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we...
Yes, Christine, I can come in here.
Please, Paul, great. Come in.
Yes, please. Just supplement on the presentation. One other thing I need to add for the listeners and viewers participating in this webinar is that the study we've undertaken is a little bit on a small scale, but we think if it is expanded to cover other parts of the country, to be more informative, especially to influence the costs of investment in the boreholes and the groundwater development. Because you realize that materials influence so much the cost of investment. And in this case, we realize that corrosion in some parts of the country is not as significant as it is in other parts of the country. With the study that Robert is spearheading, I think it is timely And I think this will go ahead to leverage especially costs of investments under the district local governments. I want to think that when the final report from the small study we're doing comes out, it should be more resourceful, but also kickstart a discussion going forward that should be enriched. And I think this insight that comes out through this study is very, very critical. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. And that you've responded to Teddy Robert's comments indirectly about insights into training and capacity programs initiated by Stop the Rot. As Paul said, it's a very small study, and Stop the Rot actually is quite a small initiative, but we have a whole set of stakeholders who are part of it. It's action research, so some small pieces of work and bringing people together to bring about action. So in terms of training, capacity building programs for local maintenance, that's action that would need to take place within Uganda and goes beyond the kind of core funding for the research of Stop the Rot. But if anyone's interested to join the International Stop the Rot action team, action group, please drop me a mail. I'll put my email in the chat box for you again, because we're really keen that action is taken by all kinds of stakeholders at the level that they can manage. So I hope that kind of responds to the question. Anything else, Robert, Elisa?
Well, I'm not seeing any new chats coming in, so looks like our audience is so far comfortable with what we've talked about, and maybe they don't have any more questions. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. And I have to say, I'm really grateful for the length of the webinar, because it means we can actually comprehensively go through the questions, something which rarely happens on webinars. So I appreciate that. And I think maybe we can hand back to the Water Resources Institute.
Yeah, of course, while we are handing back, I want to have a chance to say my last remarks on to this. It's been such a good initiative. I want to thank the Water Resources Institute for making this arrangement. It's very good that we can come together as professionals and share experiences, lessons, and of course, learn one from another. Honestly, I wasn't aware of this test which is going on, but I'm going to make sure that I get involved, so that we can partner together with the team that is testing these 100 units. I do, if it's a solution for the nation, I would be very happy, because it will solve a lot of challenges. Then of course, the participants, those that have joined in, thanks for your time, for giving us your time. The comments that have come in have been enriching. I'm really happy that you help us to think beyond just the study. You know, when you're looking into the study and that's all you're focusing on, water, boreholes, but if we need to see how we can, of course, link this to the health, link this to the day-to-day life, especially the aspects of looking at how the cooking utensils and the water that we're using. I mean, it opens up our mind to think a little bit wider. Of course, there always has to be a scope of the study. Some of these may not be areas that we can maybe document within our reports, but all we can maybe put a line or two for another person, another researcher to look into that direction. But for us as a sector, a government institution, it's been helpful to make sure that we put our synergies together, look at how we can create lines of collaboration from our sister stakeholders, so that we provide a one-stop solution to this problem. And thank you so much. It's been very helpful and enriching. It was a pleasure having you colleagues online. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Robert and Dr. Kastin. The presentation was very interesting. The discussion was very interesting. Allow me to hand over the mic to my boss. This is Madam Gwendolyn Choburungi, the coordinator for Water Resources Institute, to give us the closing remarks.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can hear you,
Loud and clear.
Okay. I just want to thank Castin. I want to thank Robert. I want to thank Cheyune and the team for this good presentation. It was very informative. I'm sure the participants who listened in have got some good information from for regards with groundwater development and management. And we wish all the best for the presenters and the people who participated. We are going to be having more webinars. I don't know about the Christmas one. We shall see how to organize the Christmas one December to see that people can listen in before the year ends. We have going to prepare another webinar. But these webinars go on every month, and there are going to be a series of webinars as we continue to present our findings from researchers, from practice, and from science. And we hope if you get more webinars, you can even increase the rate from 1 per month to more than 1 per month. And otherwise, I wish you all the best. I wish you the best weekend, and I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you, thank you, thank everybody. Bye-bye.